So I'm Jasmine Burke. I'm a second-year nursing student at the University of Alberta. I have been in Edmonton since 2015, so it's been quite a bit of time. And I originally came from India, so I immigrated from New Delhi, India, the capital, and I went to Toronto first. We lived there for, I think, 5 years or so, and then we moved to Edmonton. And ever since, this place has been my home.
My name is Gamesh, and I'm 27 years old. I came to Canada in 2004, and my family and I immigrated from Ethiopia. And my mother, she is a single mother. She had to work immediately when she came here, just to support the family. And so because of that, I felt like I had to grow up faster, making decisions for myself, especially when I saw like the stress that she's going through, and I just never wanted to burden her with anything. So I was that type of child. I had to be independent and, I guess hyper independent at a very young age, and especially making decisions when it came to my own education. I started in grade 3 because I came here when I was 8.
My name is Sandra Kase. I'm 18 years old. I called Edmonton home around 2012. I'm currently a first-year student at Grant MacEwan. I am also a youth worker at the C5FRN organization. I am a Munyamurenge, which is a group of Rwandans who migrated to Burundi. One early experience moving to Canada was during high school in grade 10 that I can vividly remember is when I went into a program called Social Fast Track. I remember that I was one out of the 2 Black identified individuals that participated in the program, because as the course continued, people that were identified as Black kept dropping out because they were discouraged about the workload that was required, because during that time, it was during COVID, where we had to do it simultaneously online as well as in class, which required a lot of dedication and discipline. I guess to the Black individuals that took part in that, it was pressure on them because they did not see that much other diversity in that class, because it was mostly Caucasians in that class. With that, it motivated me to prove to myself that I am able to participate in that course and do well in it, and to prove to my friends that had dropped out that as a Black individual that is one of the only people in that class, that I'm able to do it just because of my dedication, not about my background, but the individual that I am.
So I think for me the bigger deal was when I was in Toronto, when I first came in from India. That was like my first experience in Canada, and that I remember it being quite difficult for me because I didn't know how to speak English then, and learning the language was really difficult, especially because students around me weren't very patient with me. So I often got bullied for it. I was often mocked for my accent, and it was a really difficult thing to go through, because I would come home and I'd feel very lost, and I felt like, just that sense of anguish. And I know that my parents really struggled with it, because it's hard to see your child go through that. But it just took a lot of strength. It took a lot of support from my family to be able to actually learn how to speak English. And then when I was able to do that, it was just kind of being able to embrace my identity and know that it was a really essential part of me, as opposed to something that I had to run away from. So that was kind of my early childhood. I had to learn to love who I was, love the place that I came from, love the people that I could consider a part of me. And it was just kind of knowing that Canada is a part of my identity, as a lot of my other things are, and India is just as big of a part as Canada is. So it was learning to accept the beauty of the type of culture that I was bringing to the table, and always knowing that if I am entering a room, that my ethnicity, my language, and the culture that I bring is an addition to the group, and it's not something that I have to cover for or compensate for. So that was something that I had to learn through my high school experiences and my middle school experiences. That was also what pushed me into a lot of the equity work that I did, a lot of the anti-racism work that I did in high school, because it was really learning to be a part of people that spoke a similar language, and also learning to be with people that don't speak that language, and also value the same things. We all value the idea of being loved and being honored and being valued in a space for who you are and for the background you come with. And it was really nice being in a space of people that also valued that.
I had no prior education experience back home. My family and I actually just came from a refugee camp. So I was the type of child who talked a lot. So I learned how to adapt to my surroundings very fast. So when it came to learning a new language, it was easy for me because I talk a lot. So talking the language was easier for me. Like even in the refugee camp, I spoke multiple languages because it was quite diverse. There was Somalians there, and I also even learned how to speak Somalian and Swahili and Arabic at a very young age. So speaking it was very easy for me. But it was more challenging when it came to coming to Canada and like learning how to read and write. Just because I didn't have like the right support. So when I was placed in the school system, I immediately started ESL. And initially I thought it was going okay. It was okay. It was going all right when it came to school. Again, the only difficulties I had was just reading and writing. But all the other subjects I was doing okay in. Math especially, because it was just numbers. It was universal. It was easy. But once I reached grade 6, that was when my ESL instructor, she wanted me to go to a different school. And this different school had a EE3 program where it was, so my knowledge, it was supposed to help me in advancing or like learning how to read and write. That's what I was told that it was going to be focused on, because that was, to my knowledge, that was where my difficulties was. But when I was in there, it was completely different. I wasn't really challenged at all. So we would be given these like modules to complete, and the module that I would always complete and I would always seek to be challenged even more was actually math. And I would even ask if I could like attend like separate classes, like the normal classes, because EE3, it just felt like it was a place where I felt like I was kind of like, they didn't know what to do with me, so they just placed me there. And it was a class where it was like full with like special needs students, and when I saw that, I just saw myself as that as well. And I never, from grade 7 to grade 9, I never really asked my instructors why I was in there. I just thought like they knew the best. Because growing up, and plus I think it also has to do with like where I was from, to respect your elders, and like your elders know what's best for you. So I trusted in my teachers that they knew the best for me. So I continued with the program, and my mother wasn't aware of me being in that program. It's just because I kind of took the responsibility when it came to making decisions for school, just because I knew my mom was stressed out and like she was working multiple jobs just to manage 3 kids. So I didn't want to burden her with that. Plus there was that language barrier. She doesn't speak English, and so having to have her come to school and me having to be the translator, it just felt like, what's the point? Because I would just be making the decision. So that's why I carried on to being in that program all the way throughout high school. And once I got to the high school and it came to the time where I was going to graduate, which was in grade 12, my instructors, they actually wanted me to come back for the 4th year. So they found me like a permanent job, because there was a program called work experience in that program as well, where they would send you off to work for 2 hours, come back to school. And that was a plan to come back for the 4th year. And my mother, that's when I had to tell her that I had to come back for the 4th year, and she didn't understand because she thought like I was going to go to a post-secondary, right? And of course she would think that because she thought I was taking regular classes. And but I had to unfortunately tell her that I can't go to a post-secondary because I don't have the regular academic credits that I need, and that I wasn't going into the regular classes, that I was in the special program. And so when she found that out, she had a different agenda for me, and that was to not come back for the 4th year, to go and upgrade, which I did. I went to Norquest. I upgraded all of my needed credits for the career path that I had in mind at the time. And so in order to be placed in the EE3 program, you have to actually have a special needs diagnosis, but I didn't have a proper diagnosis. So I was just, I think, placed in there just because maybe I had issues with reading and writing, and that I was much slower in understanding some certain subjects. So, but when I went to Norquest, where I did my upgrading, I was excelling. I was doing really well in all the subjects that I needed to succeed. So I continued, and from there I did computer engineering in NAIT, where I graduated just recently, actually, in 2023 in April. It did take a while, took a long journey, but I am here and I finished, and I'm very proud and I'm very excited to start a new chapter.
During the first years that me and my family came to Edmonton, we were, I believe, the second family with our background, the Munyamurenge background, that had come into Edmonton. So with that, I didn't have the opportunity of diversity or to learn about my background or be connected to who I was with my ethnicity. So it made me try to assimilate with what was societal at that time, because I didn't have anywhere else to look at, because I was partly the only black child, in Munyamurenge black child, along with my siblings and this one other family that had immigrated to Edmonton as well. So with that challenge, I didn't know who I was growing up aside from what my family told me. So I didn't identify as a Munyamurenge. I identified as a black person, but nothing specific to my personal ethnicity. One of the things I enjoyed doing is traditional dance, where at church I teach with the collaboration of 2 other participants. I teach children from 10 to 16 the art of our traditional dance from our background. With the clothes that we use, called ibitenge, we perform during Sunday services as to allow the children to learn about their background and have a sense of belonging from where they came from. I got into this because I am the child of a pastor in my church, but the main reason that motivated me to do this was my desire to teach the children in my church where they came from, because as a child when I first came here, I didn't have that opportunity to be able to participate in the things my culture did or learn about the beauty of my culture. So I take this time to serve my community, the aspect of teaching the children about their past and where they came from, so that they know that their culture is important, and the practices that are taking part in that culture are meaningful to not only their parents and elders, but so that in the future it is meaningful to them, so that they may teach the ongoing generations.
So when I first came to Canada, there were a lot of elements of my culture that were unfortunately not as available to me. Obviously, I'd been taken far away from my friends. I'd been taken far away from the group of people that I always knew. We had been made a tradition to be able to go to Gurdwara every week or so, and I wasn't able to do that anymore for a long period of time because I just didn't know how accessible it was. So at that point, I had thought that, okay, I was this person and I was a very cultural individual, and now I'm taken away to this place where I don't actually know anybody and I have to just become a new person. And I think that was the biggest thing that I had to learn as an immigrant child, that I don't have to become a new person. There will be elements of my identity that will be added on. There will be new things that I will learn. There will be new people that I will meet. And there will be new things and stories that I'll hear. But that doesn't mean that the person I was has to change. It would just add to my identity to make it a more of a cultured sort of perspective on how Canadian life is. So one of the biggest ways that I could do that, one of the biggest ways that I could connect with the people back home and connect with the language and the music that I'd grown to love was dance. And I always loved to dance, but I think coming here, I really learned the value of Indian dancing and how when I dance, I feel like I'm embracing the parts of myself that once in my life I used to run from. While there was a point in my elementary school when I first came to Canada that I would hate speaking in Hindi or Punjabi at school because I was like, oh, I'm going to be made fun of and it's going to be not fun. And now I am happy to post all of my Indian dances and me dancing to all this Indian music because I've grown to love that part of myself. I've grown to love that part of my culture because that is what makes me who I am, and that's what makes me so unique. So I learned, I don't just stop at one. I don't think that that's the best way to embrace culture and identity. I'm very good at the type of dancing that I do, and the type that I've been trained to do. So when I was young, when I thought that I was losing my culture, my parents thought that, you know what, maybe you should join some Indian folk dancing. So I started doing Bhangra and Gidda at the Punjabi Folk Dance Academy here at Edmonton. And I spent quite a bit of time with them. I got pretty well versed with the dancing, and the surprising part was that in India I wasn't so good, but I got much, much better in Canada. So I did Bhangra, I did Gidda, and then later on I wanted to expand my horizons a little bit, so I took a few Bharatanatyam classes, which was more of that South Indian dance. And it wasn't something that was directly part of my culture, but I thought that learning it was able to embrace the identity of being a learner of cultures as well. I think when it comes to equity and when it comes to multiculturalism, it's going beyond just embracing your own identity. It goes to embracing the variety of perspectives and the variety of cultures that you get to expose yourself to, especially in Canada. And I think that was a really interesting part because now I learn about dances from all over India. I've learned Maharashtrian dance. I've learned Bhangra, Gidda. I've been pretty good at learning Garba right now. I've learned a little bit of Kuttu. So I am really exposing myself to a lot of different parts of culture because I don't want to restrict myself to the part from the part of India that I come from. I want to kind of broaden my horizons. And from the time that I used to learn dance, now I'm also teaching dance. So now I teach Bhangra and Gidda at the Edmonton Mennonite Center. And it was really cool because one of my first classes, when I went in to go teach, I learned a lot from them too. They taught me some Nigerian dances, and I think it was really interesting because I got to share my love of dance with people that also embrace their culture. And it was really nice to see how music and dance and culture can all bring people together. And that's why we're here. That's why equity work and that's why anti-racism work is so critical to our purpose, is because if we can learn to embrace our own identities and respectfully admire and also invite the identities of other people, we can really thrive as a society. We can learn to love each other, and we can learn to respect the reason why we are on this planet, to be able to do great things, but also do it so that we can all look at each other and be like, you know what, you're still human, you're still just like me, but in your own unique way.
So when I was in high school, I heard about an organization that was inside my neighborhood. It's called Riverbend Rocks. And I heard about it from this lady named Vanessa. She was the one who started it. She was going door to door. And I think I was in high school, yeah. And so it helped me a lot in making decisions when it came to the career path that I was going for. They provided so many programs like the after school program and the summer program as well, where we would go to the school that's nearby the place that I live, and we would, like borrow their laptops, go to Khan Academies, and just like they would help us read and with math questions. There was just a lot of like academic support in that organization, which at the time I did need. And the thing that really helped me the most in making the decision to go upgrade actually in Norquest, it was when I opened up to Vanessa about like what I was going through and like what I've been going through education wise. She was like very supportive, like immediately, and that's what I needed at the time, which was like another adult member who was outside, my family member, because I always felt like my mom just said those things just because she was my mother, and like she didn't really understand the academic schooling system here, but Vanessa did, and she felt like it didn't matter what happened in the past, to just only focus on the future and how I could change it. Fast forward, when I finished upgrading at Norquest, I volunteered for Riverbend Rocks, and I saw a common theme within the neighborhood, within the community that we were working with, which was newcomers and facing the same challenges as I did. Youths having to grow up fast, making the decisions of themselves on their own without support of parental guidance or anything like that. So I saw that common theme, and my goal was to help the youth in making sure that they, have an open communication with their parents and not being afraid to seek help from their parents, no matter how difficult the topic may be. And the Riverbend Rocks offers a lot of support in like tutoring. We offer tutoring programs, we offer ESL programs, we offer mentorship for the youths. And the program that really speaks to me is the tutoring program, because you see a lot of these kids are actually, they really are invested in their education, and all they need is someone, that person, to support them and to continue pushing them and to help them feel like we care about their education and we care about their future. And that's what I've always wanted when I was younger. And so, and of course, some of these kids, again, they're newcomers and their parents would be too busy, or, they're thinking about food on their plate.
My research, to a great degree, underlies really the idea that education is critical when it comes to development of youth. When I first came to Canada and I was just learning kind of how things work here, the way that my school was really decided how I would view myself and how I would view my identity. Thankfully, I was able to come into schools that I knew had educators that I had valued and prioritized those ideas of equity and the idea of being welcoming and inclusive. And that's why I was able to feel empowered and feel like I was an essential part of the school. So education and the way that discourse happens within classrooms is critical for how we view things like multiculturalism and other ideas of racism. So I think the biggest point of my research was the idea that we should be encouraging this discussion. It is difficult to talk about things like sexism, things like racism, things that as students we're already talking about, but not in a way that can be controlled, not in a way that can be monitored, not in a way that can be guided. And when we are discussing these things without any previous knowledge, with unawareness, what we are doing is we are fueling a culture of polarization. We are fueling the sense of this lack of awareness that actually ends up creating these very strong perspectives that only can hurt people, and that can lead to cyberbullying and racism on the internet as well as our other social media sites. So my research was focused on that. Within my research, I was able to send out surveys and questionnaires to about 400 students within my high school, and I was able to actually discuss the impacts of that. I was able to discuss what a lot of students were feeling, and they felt that, especially in the time of COVID, they felt that a lot of ideas of racism and a lot of ideas of sexism, people were talking about it, but people were largely unaware of what was actually happening. especially with the Me Too movement that had started. There was a lot of conversation about that. There was a lot of speculation that had been happening, but in the grand scheme of things, it just led to a lot of extremism and polarization within our student group. And that was really not nice to see, and I found that was a particularly disheartening thing for me, because I had taken the time to become aware of this stuff, and I really did not want to see fellow students speaking in harsh ways and radicalizing against these topics. So I think that's what spurred my research in the first place, was because I needed that discussion. I needed that conversation with my teachers, within my classes, to know that I'm in a safe space where I can talk about things like racism and sexism without being penalized, without having my perspective questioned or being named as a radical feminist. I wanted to be able to talk about this stuff without being called a feminist, and without being called an angry feminist at that. So the result of my research was that our educators they were willing, but they were unaware of how to make it happen, how to make that discourse and that conversation happen within our classrooms. So I was able to kind of develop, in the appendix of one of my studies, I was able to develop like a rough idea of what a professional development toolkit would look like, how we can prepare our educators to be able to tackle these topics within their classroom. This was not my own personal experience. I knew that even as a student, I could only offer so much, right? So that's why I had to talk to educators that I knew were able to do this in their classrooms, that I knew were successful in being able to have that discourse in their classroom, and that students felt that they could be transparent in that classroom without being penalized. And that kind of discussion was happening. So I wanted to ask them, what are you doing right? So I incorporated a lot of the strategies and the feedback that they gave me, and I was able to add that to the professional development toolkit. And this acted as a resource to be able to speak to educators and be able to incorporate these very essential conversations within that thing. And then eventually, as all of this came together, I was able to develop a professional development session on everything that I had learned. And when I asked for feedback on the session, which was also through a survey and questionnaire format, I learned that it was actually helpful, that educators felt that this topic is very important, and professional development sessions like the one I had delivered helped, that it was important for them to realize that this is very needed in our population and students want it, and this is how we can make it happen. So ultimately, thematically, we think about how there's unawareness and our educational spaces, because they teach, their whole purpose is to teach. We need to teach about people. We need to teach beyond math, sciences, and social studies. We need to teach about the human beings that we're going to be interacting with, and how diversity and how respect for everybody is really, really important for us to be able to function as a society. And those sort of conversations just cannot be sidelined for any other purpose.
Now, as a Riverbend Rocks staff, I am an engagement coordinator, and I work with a lot of the kids in the neighborhood, so it's more face-to-face that I do. And I've noticed a common theme, which is the youth struggling to have that support and that push for their education, having an adult figure or someone to encourage them and show them that their education is important, because I've noticed that a lot of the kids here, they're very invested in their education, and we are trying to give that support and resource as well, access, and by that we offer youth mentorship, we offer tutoring programs, ESL programs, because we've noticed that like a lot of the kids here, their parents have language barriers, and then they're working very hard to just pay the bills and give them food on their plate. So one key advice for the parents would be to seek resources, especially in their own community, and because I understand that most of the newcomers probably don't have any English language, so probably there's that language barrier. So if you reach out to your own community, you might have someone within your community who is aware of these resources, and they could help you out with your children, with your kids that seek some guidance or some support that they need when it comes to their education. For example, in the Riverbend Rocks, here in this Riverbend community, we have this resource, and we go to door, making sure that everyone knows that these resources are literally in your fingertips that you could access. All you have to do is, seek these resources. And for example, we have multiple programs, and for one of them is our after-school program that we have. And the parents, I feel like if you are too busy, I understand that life can get really hard. Just know that your kids, though, they still love you, and they still want to be able to help you in the way, you know, all they want to do is just help their parents, right? So to make their decision making easier. So if you want to have them into these programs, which we have, and they're all free programs, and the after school program, what we do is we give the space to these kids to be creative and to learn ways to help them adapt or figure out how to learn better or know what techniques or strategies. So.
One key advice I'd give to parents is to be strong on their commitment to teach their children about their background and where they came from, so that the values and practices that come from their ethnicity are not lost, but it's built as the generation goes, and the values and the beauty of their homeland is kept in their hearts for generations to come. One advice for young people is to seek their identity, not only as an individual themselves, but as a person in their background, where they came from, to seek what made them who they are, or what made their culture what it is. Going on with that is, with whatever challenges are going on in your life, find value in who you are, in your skin color or your identity, but for who you are personally. So don't let others unmotivate you to not do what you desire because of the stereotypical societal views they have on your type of ethnicity or race.
So I feel very grateful for the opportunities that I've been given, and I feel very grateful to be able to be on this stage and be able to be in this feature in itself, to be able to speak about my experiences and be able to empower other people to speak about theirs. So as for policymakers and decision makers, the big thing would be to invite perspectives onto the table. We, as just with one group of people, as one voice, cannot comment on the journeys and the narratives of all these individuals and be able to make sustainable and impactful change for them. So if we are able to do powerful and actually meaningful equity work and anti-racism work within our communities, we have to invite these people to the table. We have to listen to their perspectives, we have to listen to their voices. So for them, I would say listen and be able to work through those experiences and be able to inspire and empower these individuals to be able to speak up and use their voice, because the best way to make change is to hear and listen to what needs to be done first. As for parents who might have a youth that is struggling with this sort of thing, I would also say, listen to your child. For me, the biggest support system were my parents, because they knew who I was, they knew my cultural identity, they knew exactly what we were going through. So the biggest thing is to be able to open up a communication channel with them. Be able to say, you know what, I'm struggling too, and this has been a really difficult transition for us. So let's talk about it. Let's have that discussion, so that those children can be able to, first of all, understand that their perspective matters and they should be listened to. And number two, be able to voice those opinions, be able to put them into words and be able to express exactly how they're feeling. If they feel excluded, if they feel like they're alone here, they should be able to speak to their parents about it and at least get that support system. So for parents, always listen to your child and invite that discussion. Lastly, for youth who may be struggling, if you do feel like you are alone, believe that you're not. Reach out to support groups that are also working for that anti-racism equity purpose. You will find people who are like-minded individuals like yourself. Maybe they don't speak the same language, but they value the same things you do. And once you find people who prioritize those same elements of life and elements of social security and humanness that you can find them, you will feel loved and you will feel welcome in this country as well.